Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to dig into some pretty hardcore military strategy.
Sounds intense. I'm ready.
We're tackling Carl von Clausewitz's On War, but don't worry, we'll break it down. Specifically, chapters 12 and 13, which, knowing our audience, you'll find fascinating.
Yeah, maximizing victory and knowing when to make a strategic retreat, that's crucial stuff no matter the century.
Exactly. Clausewitz was writing back in the 19th century, but honestly, it's kind of scary how much his stuff still applies to modern warfare.
You hit the nail on the head. Clausewitz was ahead of his time when he said that victory isn't just about winning a battle, it's about what you do after the battle that really matters.
Right, so it's not enough to just win. You got to capitalize on that win. How you do that, though, that's the real art form, right?
You got it. It's like he calls it the unsung hero of victory, this idea of the pursuit. It's often overlooked, but it's the silent service that sets the stage for a lasting victory, not just a temporary win.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's unpack that unsung hero a bit. What's Clausewitz getting at here?
So he's saying it's all about maximizing your gains from that victory while making sure you're also minimizing future threats from the enemy. You've really got to cripple them so they can't come back at you.
Almost like in football, right? Scoring a touchdown is awesome, don't get me wrong. But if you don't get that extra point, or even worse, let the other team score right back, that win's not looking so hot anymore.
Perfect analogy. And Clausewitz breaks it down even further. He identifies 3 distinct degrees of pursuit, each with its own purpose and impact on the enemy.
Oh, this is getting good. Lay it on me.
So first, you've got the simple pursuit, often carried out by cavalry. It's more about observation, keeping tabs on the enemy, rather than full-on engagement.
Right, so you're not fully committing yet, just kind of sizing them up, seeing how they react.
Exactly. Then there's the pursuit with a strong, mixed advanced guard, more intentional, intended to drive the enemy back to their next defensible position, but not necessarily completely crushing them.
More of a calculated pushing than a wild chase. I like it.
And then finally, you have the full pursuit, the real deal. This is where the entire victorious army maintains relentless pressure on the retreating enemy. No mercy.
Whoa, this is where the gloves come off.
This is the knockout punch. The aim here is to completely disorganize the enemy, break their spirit, deny them any chance to regroup, or even think about counterattacking.
That's where the real psychological impact comes into play, right? It's not just about physical exhaustion at that point. It's about crushing their will to fight.
You nailed it. Clausewitz was a big believer in that psychological dimension of warfare, and he wasn't shy about it.
Makes sense. I mean, can you imagine you're on the run, exhausted, demoralized, and just when you think you might catch a break, boom, the enemy is right there on your heels again.
It's brutal, and it works. And one of the best examples of this, the master of this kind of relentless pursuit, was Napoleon.
Napoleon, of
Oh.
course, the emperor of pursuit. Tell us more about how he fits into all of this.
Well, after crushing the Prussians at the Battle of Jena in 1806, he didn't just let them limp away. Oh no, Napoleon went full pursuit mode. He was relentless.
He smelled blood in the water, didn't he?
He understood that a defeated army is a vulnerable army, and he was going to press that advantage for everything it was worth.
A true strategist for sure. But this reminds me, Clausewitz wasn't just about relentless offense. He also had some pretty insightful things to say about the art of strategic retreat.
And that's where things get really interesting. Clausewitz was big on flipping the script, Like he's saying a strategic retreat, if you do it right, can be just as powerful as a full-on attack.
Okay, now my interest is really piqued. What's Clausewitz's take on a strategic retreat? I mean, this isn't just about turning tail and running, right?
Absolutely not. For Clausewitz, it was all about maintaining morale and discipline, even when you're the one backing off.
So it's about staying in control, not letting the enemy dictate your every move.
Exactly. It's controlled resistance, not some chaotic, everyone for themselves kind of thing.
Okay, so less about running away, more about falling back strategically.
Gotcha. And the perfect example of this is Frederick the Great's retreat after the Battle of Kolin in 1757. Textbook example of how a well-managed retreat can keep a tactical defeat from turning into a complete disaster.
All right, so we've got Napoleon, the master of the relentless pursuit, and now Frederick the Great as the king of the strategic retreat. I'm ready to dive into the specifics of these battles.
Let's do it. These leaders exemplify Clausewitz's principles perfectly.
Hit me with it. Let's start with Napoleon at Jena. You mentioned his pursuit was legendary, but what made it so effective?
Okay, so picture this. Napoleon, fresh off a victory against the Prussians at Jena, he could have just taken a breather, let them lick their wounds.
But that wasn't Napoleon's style, was it?
Not a chance. He knew he had to press his advantage, keep the pressure on, just like Clausewitz talks about. So, boom, relentless pursuit, marching his troops hard, even resorting to those brutal night marches.
Which you said were almost unheard of back then.
Practically military malpractice, armies just didn't fight that way. But Napoleon, he was playing 4D chess while everyone else was playing checkers. He knew that shock, the audacity of marching through the night, it'd amplify the terror for the fleeing Prussians.
So we're talking psychological warfare as much as anything else.
100%. Imagine, you're a Prussian soldier, you just got hammered by Napoleon, demoralized, exhausted, just desperate for a moment to regroup.
You just want to catch your breath, maybe grab a snack.
Exactly. But nope. Right as you think you might get a second's peace, Napoleon's forces show up like something out of a nightmare. That constant pressure, never a moment's rest, it grinds you down.
No time to regroup, no time to think straight, just pure unadulterated fear.
And that, my friend, is how you break an army's spirit.
And that's what happened to the Prussians.
Jena was a decisive win for Napoleon, but that relentless pursuit, that's what turned it into a massacre. The Prussians were completely shattered, lost tens of thousands as prisoners, all their artillery, supplies, gone.
To talk about making an example of someone.
Napoleon understood how to deliver a message, and boy, did it resonate. He understood what Clausewitz was talking about, that psychological element of warfare that decides the fight before it even begins.
Amazing. So that's aggressive pursuit, Napoleon style. But what about strategic retreat? How does Frederick the Great illustrate Clausewitz's principles at Kulin?
Colon. This is a prime example of how a well-managed retreat can save your bacon. So Frederick the Great, even though he's considered a genius tactician, he's facing a much larger Austrian force at Kolin, and things aren't looking good.
Not the ideal starting point for old Freddy.
No. But here's where his brilliance comes in.
Yeah.
He recognizes he's in a bad spot and makes the tough call to retreat.
Which can't be easy, especially for a leader like Frederick the Great. Pride's got to be a factor.
Oh, absolutely. It'd be tempting to dig in, keep fighting, even against the odds. But Frederick, he gets what Clausewitz is laying down. He knows a messy, everyone-for-themselves retreat will be a bloodbath.
Yeah, once that route starts, it's hard to stop.
So instead, Frederick orchestrates a fighting withdrawal, keeps his ranks tight, uses his cavalry to cover his movements, and even launches counterattacks when the opportunity presents itself.
So even though he's falling back, he's still in control. He's not just reacting to the Austrians.
Exactly. He's dictating the terms, even in retreat, buying time, regrouping, looking for an opening, just like we were talking about earlier.
That's some next-level chess playing right there. I bet that controlled retreat saved his army from being completely wiped out.
Could have been a whole different story otherwise. Colin was a loss for Frederick on paper, but that well-managed retreat, that's what allowed him to keep his army intact, still a force to be reckoned with.
These examples are really driving home the point. You have to master both sides of the coin. The aggressive pursuit when you're on top, and the art of strategic retreat when the tide turns against you.
That's the hallmark of a great commander, being able to read the situation, adapt, and make the call, even when it's a hard call.
It's about flexibility, not being married to any one strategy, and never, ever losing sight of the bigger picture.
And there's one more thing about strategic retreat that Clausewitz really emphasizes, something I think is especially relevant for you as a modern military leader.
Okay, I'm all ears. What else does Clausewitz have up his sleeve?
Clausewitz, he wants us to remember, retreat, it's not just about survival.
It's not just about putting some distance between you and the enemy, hoping for the best.
Nope, not at all. He's saying when you manage it right, a retreat, it can actually be used to, shape the whole conflict, turn the tables.
So you're using that time, that space you create, strategically, almost like you're setting a trap, even as you're pulling back.
You got it. A pursuing army, they're not invincible, they get overconfident, they overextend their supply lines, they get sloppy.
And a smart commander can use that to their advantage.
Yeah.
It's like in that movie.
The Princess Bride.
Exactly. Never get involved in a land war in Asia, right? But seriously, it reminds me of Napoleon in Russia. Classic example of what not to do.
Oh, yeah. Napoleon marching all the way to Moscow. What a mess. The Russians, they knew what they were doing. Scorched earth, drawing him deeper and deeper.
And Napoleon, he took the bait.
Hook, line, and sinker. By the time he got to Moscow, his army was spent, undersupplied, and then bam, Russian winter.
The ultimate no-win scenario.
It's heartbreaking, strategically speaking, and Clausewitz, he uses this to drive home a point. Sometimes, even though it goes against every instinct, not fighting, That's the winning move.
Choosing your battles, that's what separates the good commanders from the great ones, right? So strategic retreat, it's not waving the white flag. It's more like biding your time, waiting for the right moment to strike back.
Exactly. Clausewitz is all about that dynamic, that ebb and flow. Warfare, it's not a straight line. It's about knowing how to ride those waves even when they're crashing down around you.
So how did these ideas, developed way back when, how do they hold up in modern warfare? I mean, the battlefields are completely different now. Drones, cyber warfare, the whole 9 yards.
And that's the thing about Clausewitz, his insights. They're timeless. The tech might change, but the human element, the psychology of conflict, that never goes out of style.
So you're saying even with all the advancements, it still comes down to those core principles. Morale, maneuverability, knowing when to push and when to hold back.
You got it. And honestly, the ability to control the tempo, to dictate the terms of engagement, to decide when and where to fight, and yeah, when to retreat, that's probably even more crucial now than it was back then.
It's like that chess game we were talking about. Whoever can control the board, anticipate the moves, they're the ones calling the shots.
And don't forget about Afghanistan. The coalition withdrawal, that had some echoes of Clausewitz in it, don't you think?
Yeah, how they managed to pull out all those troops and equipment under constant pressure. That was impressive.
Exactly. They were retreating, sure, but they were still in control. Prioritizing evacuation, minimizing casualties, achieving their objectives, all while under fire. Classic strategic retreat.
Clausewitz would be proud.
He'd be writing a new chapter about it, I bet.
Well, on that note, I think we've given our listeners a lot to digest today. This deep dive into Clausewitz, it's been eye-opening, to say the least.
Agreed. But like we always say, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. So to all you listeners out there, don't let this be the end. Keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, keep diving deep into the stuff that makes you tick. And who knows, maybe we'll have even more to talk about next time. Until then, keep those brain cells firing.